There's a lot of perks to being short, like this first one, which is pretty selfish, but I use it a lot to hide from my problems. Like I could be getting off the train, but it feels like it's hotter than the devil's balls, and there's no shade for blocks. So instead of baking in the sun, I somehow find myself walking behind the closest group shade that I could find, till we reach the stairwell. But the sun hasn't been the worst thing I've tried to hide from, as when I'm in school, whenever we get a new seating chart, I'd always hope that the person who's sitting in front of me was at least a little taller than me, so I could hide behind them and get away with things like putting my head down, checking my phone, or for the biggest reason, to avoid making eye contact with my teachers. As without fail, whenever one would ask, "So who hasn't read today?" my heart would just start tweaking out as if I just ran a marathon. But if they can't see me, it's almost as if I don't exist at all. But this next perk, I think I take for granted way too much. I always thought it was embarrassing that in some places that I would sit, my feet don't touch the ground. But these thoughts instantly get crushed whenever I encounter situations like these. Like my first time on a plane. When I sat down, the seat was perfectly tailored for somebody my size, and I slept like a baby. However, if you were slightly taller, your body would be folded like an omelet, trying to get comfortable for hours until your flight is over. And it only gets worse in places like work or school. If you're like my friend Morty, we could be sitting at our desks, where at least I could try to position my legs to get comfortable, but Morty couldn't sit down without the table clipping through his legs like if we're playing prop hunt. And with any given movement, his legs will lift up the table, and at worst, scaring everyone by accidentally flipping it over. An actual crime against humanity. Speaking of scaring people, one of my favorite perks about being short is how I use it to scare people. A bit of an evil confession, but when I was younger, I used to scare my second oldest sister, Anna, because she tended to check on me from time to time, so I began developing intrusive thoughts, and one day I gave in to them, as I turned off all the lights and then just stuffed my body in the smallest places it could fit, all to try to scare her. And I did this a few times, but this would all come crashing down for me when one day she was walking to my room. But what I didn't know was that this time she was carrying a glass of water, and when she came to my door, I scared her and she ended up spilling it all over the floor. And bro, if my mom ever found out about it, just know I'm gonna be in pain, cause my ass is getting shipped to Spain. So I rightfully cleaned up the mess I made. Don't abuse your power. But this next perk I completely stumbled on by accident. When I was 13, I asked my mom if I could go to the gym, and she said no, but she must have felt bad for me. So as a compromise, she bought me a gift. These goofy looking 2-pound weights to make me feel better. And say with me now, what do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do? You do what you can. And so for the summer, I spent hours each day just going at these weights, to a point where, at the time, I had great development with my arms, which I have to give credit to my size, because if I was any taller, the muscles would be stretched way too far to a point where those gains wouldn't have been recognizable. And when school started, we had these arm wrestling competitions, which all of my hard work paid off, and I managed to win. But the true victory came in high school, where the guys really noticed and appreciated my hard work, and described my arms like 2 baby heads, and even did their own scientific tests to see how developed they were. Luckily for me, they don't know I built these with just 2-pound weights. One great perk deals with shopping for clothes. I was kinda disappointed when I saw that I stopped growing so early, but our wallets have ever been happier since I've been wearing the same wardrobe for the past few years. And outside of stuff such as suits, I haven't really struggled to find anything in my size. And once we have something that we no longer need, it just becomes a hand-me-down, like my middle school uniforms, as Anna went to my middle school a few years before I did, so we didn't have to pay anything, cause being a prisoner in school is free. But then there's the perks that help me with my anxiety, and there's a few of them, like not feeling like I'm in people's way, like when we're in class, when people need to take notes, or when somebody's looking for directions. Most beds and sheets are big enough for me, so I don't have to wrestle them just to find space, to get comfortable in them, to get a good night's sleep. I can blend into a crowd easily, which is a great thing for me because nothing scares me more than having to speak in front of a large group of people. I can hide in your walls without you noticing, and one of my personal favorites is that I get to go to the best place in photos, the front. So whenever we get them back, I don't have to play the game of, where am I? I could just immediately find myself and say, look ma, look, there I am. But one of the most creative perks I've seen was from gym class. My school had an obsession with a game called Ultimate Frisbee, a game where you had 2 teams of 4, and the goal was to pass the Frisbee to reach your opponent's goal without it getting stolen from the other team to score a point, and the team with the most points at the end wins. And it was an advantage of having taller players on your team because they could just like ignore the rest of the players and then just toss the Frisbee to the other side and score easy points, until one day these 2 kids, Alon and Liam, came up with a strategy to give themselves an advantage. Whenever either of them would steal the Frisbee, they decided that if they were going to win, they couldn't play in the air. So instead, they played standing near the ground, making short passes till they could reach the goal. And when they were close enough to score, instead of passing it like normally, where any of us could smack or steal it away, one would run into the goal zone, while the other would try to make the winning pass. And the thing they were known for was juking out their opponent before making the winning pass. And I might have been played a couple times, but the strategy was really smart because we've all been conditioned to play this game in the air, but to suddenly switch up playing the game to the ground, well, nobody sees that coming. And who in their bright mind is going to try to grab a frisbee flying near the ground? It's like trying to grab a squirrel, and you know what they say, you play with the squirrels, you're bound to get your nuts cracked. But this next perk, I thought at the time it was an insult, was the way how people viewed me and my age. But who could blame me, as these encounters I had were just straight up bizarre. Like one summer a few years ago, I was playing some Pokemon Brick Bronze, till all of a sudden, there was a shooting outside my building, and both me and my mom saw people running, so we ended up calling the police, and we told them everything that we saw. And I'll never forget what I heard from the cops when they were relaying the information back to their base. But yeah, the grandmother and her 8-year-old son said the shots came from the west. Bro, what? 8? Bro, I'm not 8, I was 14. I was almost double the age, and I don't think an 8-year-old would be taller than their mother, just saying. What's even crazier is that the cops weren't even that taller than me, so I just really look younger to them, I guess. But that wasn't the worst time someone has confused my age. That took place in my freshman year, during first lunch. I was finished taking up my practice regents exam for living environment, and I walked into the cafeteria to hang out with some of my friends, till all of a sudden the assistant principal proceeds to walk up to me and asks, "What are you doing here?" And the reason why she asks this is because my high school shares a building with a middle school, since they're running out of schools to put kids in New York City, like I was running out of brain cells after taking my mock regents. So obviously, I'm confused, wondering why is she asking me this, and then she says, "The middle school doesn't have their lunch period right now." And so I responded in the best way I know how. Okay, in my defense, I really had to use the bathroom, but that doesn't excuse the fact that I can't speak for my life. And she was about to call security on me until my friends had to tell her that yes, I was indeed not a middle schooler. But the thing that lives rent-free in my mind from this is that there is no possible way that you could have actually confused me with the middle schoolers, because if you so happen to take a look at them for at least 5 seconds, you would see that all of them are wearing these uniforms that consist of green shirts and dark gray pants. Bros literally look like Oscar the Grouch. And even then, if you weren't sure, their shirts also display the name of their school in front of it, which I am clearly not wearing. How do you mess that up? I was really upset with it back then, but now I'd much rather look younger than I actually am, instead of having the opposite, of looking like 1,000 years old as soon as I became an adult. What funny stories have you had with your height? Earlier I said nothing scares me more than having to speak in front of a large group of people, but this next thing is just as scary. Follow me and check out this video, where I'll show you what it is.